In this session, we will discuss about normalization in database. So as we all know, database is a collection of related data. So in the session, we will discuss about what is the requirement of normalization in database and what are the advantages of having data normalized and various data normalization techniques available and the disadvantages of database normalization. So, first we'll see the normalization definition. Normalization is the process of minimizing redundancy from relation or a set of relations. That means normalization will reduce the redundancy of data that is stored in the database. Normalization organizes the columns and tables of database to ensure that database integrity constraints properly execute their dependencies. So, by having data normalized in a database, it will ensure that the database integrity is maintained. That means we have several integrity constraints in database like referential integrity constraint, domain integrity constraint, etc. So these integrity constraints that are enforced in the database is obeyed by the database, and it will execute the dependencies. Proper execution of the dependencies of data is also maintained by having this database normalization. Normalization is a systematic technique of decomposing tables to eliminate data redundancies, that means repetition of data, and undesirable characteristics like insertion, updation, and deletion anomalies. So, as we discussed, the normalization will decompose the tables into several small tables, and by having this decomposition of data, it will eliminate the duplication of data. That means the data redundancy is reduced. It also ensures that the database will eliminate the problems of database like insertion anomaly, deletion anomaly, and updation anomaly. Now we will discuss what are the problems without having normalization. So if the table is not properly normalized and have data redundancy, then it will not only eat up the extra memory space but will also make bit difficult to handle and update the database without facing data loss. So there are many problems if the data is not normalized, data stored in a database. So the first problem is that it will use or access extra memory space, which is a resource, and in addition to having use of this extra memory space, it will make up difficult for the database to handle. That means the data stored in the database will have different problems like update anomaly, deletion anomaly, and insertion anomaly, and this will lead to data loss also. So it is a undesirable scenario where the data loss happens in a database. So insertion, updation, and deletion anomalies are very frequent if the database is not normalized. That means if the database is not normalized, it will lead to these three difficult situations, which are insertion, deletion, and updation anomaly. That means when we insert data into a database, this will produce some undesirable output, and when we delete or update data in the database, this will also cause some problems for the data that is stored in the database. Now we will discuss about advantages of having database normalized. So normalization helps to minimize data redundancy. So as we discussed, data redundancy is nothing but it is the duplication of data. So by having normalized data, it will avoid the extra space usage. Also, it will avoid the redundancy of data. Repetition of the data that is stored in the database can be reduced by having this normalization, and greater overall database organization. That means the data organized in the database will have a better performance, and we can organize the data into the database in a better manner. Data consistency within the database. So the data that is stored in the database will be consistent if we have normalized database. And so the database consistent means if there is any change happens to the data that is stored in the database, it will reflect everywhere where the same data is stored. So the data consistency is ensured, and much more flexible database design. The database design is more flexible by having the decomposition of tables into several smaller tables, and It enforces the concept of relational integrity. It also, as I said, it also ensures the integrity, relational integrities. That means it will help us to maintain the integrity constraints that are enforced in the database. So it will ensure that the primary key constraint, the foreign key constraint, the domain constraint, null constraint, all the constraints that are enforced on the database tables are maintained. Now we will discuss about the disadvantages of not having data normalized. That means if the normalization is not applied, what are the disadvantages? So we cannot start building a database without knowing the user requirements. That means if we want the database to be normalized, that means we need to understand the requirements of the user completely before we design the database, which is a difficult task. The performance degrades when the normalizing relations to higher normal forms to 4NF, 5NF, etc. That means when we normalize the tables into higher orders like 4NF and 5NF, it is observed that the performance is degrading because of the complexity of the normalization. And the normalization is a very time consuming and difficult to normalize relations to higher order. So it is a very time consuming process to normalize the tables into higher orders, and also it will take a lot of time to normalize the tables. Also it is a difficult task, it is a complex task to normalize the tables to higher orders like 4NF, 5NF, etc. Careless decompositions may lead to bad database designs, leading to serious problems. So, if we design the normalization in a wrong way, it will lead to bad database design, which will in turn lead us to the several problems that we discussed. That means insertion, deletion, and updation anomalies. So, database normalization is very complex task as we discussed, and it should be done in a proper manner, otherwise it will get negative effects. Now we will see the different forms of normalization available. So the normal forms are divided into two categories. One is the basic normal forms and the other is advanced normal forms. In basic normal forms we have 1NF, that means first normal form, 2NF, second normal form, and 3NF. And we have in the advanced forms we have 4 BCNF, that is also known as 3.5 normal forms, and we have fourth normal form. These are the advanced normal forms available in the database normalization. Thank you.